On today's video, we're cataloging the complete history of the NECA Classic Era Planet of the Apes action figures.
It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and on today's video, we're talking about the NECA Classic Era Planet of the Apes action figures, the entire history, and we're going to look at all the figures released for the line, because I actually do have them all. This is a really fun idea. I like doing videos like this, so if you enjoy this, please hit the like button, hit subscribe, and the notification bell. Let me know, let YouTube know. Keeps everything nice and rolling. If you are a Planet of the Apes fan, this is the first time you're on this channel. I have done 2 prior Apes videos you might enjoy. I did a comparison between the DVD and Blu-ray box sets for the movies, and I also did a filming locations video for Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, where these 2 figures make an appearance. So I would recommend go checking those out. Please also check out the Conquest video. I don't do filming locations. It's not in the usual space on the channel, but I had a lot of fun making that. I'd love for you to see it if you enjoy Planet of the Apes. So we're going to be going through every figure wave by wave, how they were initially released, talk about the reissues, talk about maybe some of the issues, the complications with the character lineups and stuff. We're going to go through each figure individually. It's going to be a full history breakdown, and I hope you enjoy it. We are only going to be covering the Classic Era Planet of the Apes figures, not the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes figures. That's kind of its own little mess, and I don't have any of those. And I'd like to have them in person before talking about them personally. And we're not talking about any other NECA Planet of the Apes stuff that's not in their 7-inch real toys style. We're talking about specifically this line of figures in this video. So let's get to it. We're going to go all the way back to 2014 with the first series of Planet of the Apes. Alright, so kicking off Series 1 in 2014 is Cornelius. Now, Cornelius is a very logical choice for a Planet of the Apes line for the classic series. Of course, he was a main character in the original Planet of the Apes. He was in a more supporting role in Beneath the Planet of the Apes because actor Roddy McDowall did not return for that movie due to scheduling conflicts, and then he was a major character in Escape from Planet of the Apes. And so it makes a lot of sense that he would be in the first series of the line. In general, the toy line itself, these are the kind of standard boxes you would see for the Planet of the Apes line. Nice logo, picture of the character, the logo that matches which ape group they're a part of, and then the back has this iconic image here with the Statue of Liberty. And then we got a nice shot of one of Roddy McDowall's characters. I'm not exactly sure. It looks like Cornelius, but it kind of has like a little bit of a Caesar vibe to it. Very interesting. Of course, little bio text, and then it shows who else is in Series 1, being the Gorilla Soldier and Dr. Zaius. But we can see here, you got a nice little bio for Cornelius. In case you're not familiar with the movie, there you go. I love the packaging on these. They're very simple, very straightforward, but pretty nice overall. Okay, so looking at Cornelius himself, this is a really, really nice figure overall. Though I do think there was definitely room for improvement, but naturally being the first figure, there definitely is that. Quick side note, these clear stands, I bought these separately. NECA makes these. They put them out in packs. I get them for a lot of my NECA figures because they go for kind of realistic proportions. And so because of that, you know, Cornelius is fine because he's got, you know, kind of the ape feet going on, so he's pretty stable. But some of these figures are kind of unstable and they have a tendency to fall. And with the nature of, we're talking about NECA figures from the mid-2010s, not their most sturdy time, so I've been kind of keeping them on stands to make sure nothing happens while filming. But in terms of Cornelius as a figure, I think, you know, they've got, like, the details down. Like, you have his hands, which I think are really nicely detailed here, which you can see they have, you know, all the details there, the sleeves, and the little paint details to match the costumes. I think it does help that the costume design is simplistic but iconic for Planet of the Apes, and I think they've replicated it quite well here. You can even see kind of like the seam lines in the costumes have been sculpted in. Same down to the pants. You can see the shoes down here, which are ape-shaped shoes, which is really, really fun. It's one of the coolest little details that they did in the original movies, but really, really nice overall. And then we get to the head sculpt, and I think it's probably the weakest part on him. It definitely has the look of Cornelius. He looks really, really ticked off. But I'm going to put a little picture of Cornelius next year. He just looks a little more upset than Cornelius normally is. We kind of take him as a little bit of a gentler character. But you can kind of see, I think they did a decent job capturing his likeness, but overall, it does look a little off. It's not perfect, but I kind of like the little hunch to the neck and everything going on here. In terms of articulation on pretty much all these figures, they have the same joint movement, which is you got kind of your universal shoulder joint, a hinge and swivel on the elbows. We'll talk about his accessory he just dropped in a moment. Ball joint at wrists. The hips, again, being careful because these are older NECA figures. They move out, they move forward a little bit back. They have a little bit of a swivel, knee bend, a little bit of a swivel, and then the ankles tilt and pivot forward and back. So you can kind of get, like for Cornelius, I think, with him being, he's more of an evolved ape in the series, so he stands a little bit straighter. But if you wanted to have him crouch down a little bit, say, for example, if you were trying to make like a custom for like a battle Caesar or a Galen even, you could use the Cornelius body for that. It does crouch a little bit if you wanted to have him kind of in a more crouch pose. It's going to be a little bit more restricted than some other figures in this line, but you can adjust his posture a little bit. His only accessory is the scroll, which, pretty iconic scroll designed in the movie. It's got a nice like marbly look to it, which I like. He has trouble holding it because he can kind of grip it with one hand, obviously. It does hold just not great. So what I've been kind of doing is having him hold it between one hand and the other, kind of like resting it gently like he's working on something. So yeah, that's Cornelius. I think he's a pretty solid figure overall and a good kickoff to this line, though there are some other figures beyond this that I think are a little bit more impressive. All right, our second figure we're looking at from Series 1 is Dr. Zaius. Now this Dr. Zaius is the end of movie Dr. Zaius. When they go out on the expedition to the Forbidden Zone, this is the look he had, shorter coat, he has the boots, he's wearing gloves, that sort of thing. And that's the first version that NECA released for the character. I don't have his box because I bought this one loose. But overall, I think he's a pretty nice look. We got a different, body type to him, which I think is really nice. So you can see, once again, we got really nice sculpted details to imitate the stitching. You can kind of see the undershirt. These are all one entire overlay with the shirt and the jacket, so you can't remove the jacket at all. But of course, the arms are sculpted to have said jacket. It is interesting because you do have the boots where he has like normal human feet boots, compared to the kind of ape shoes look that some of the other characters have, like Cornelius there has like the ape shoes, whereas Zaius here has got kind of normal human boots with a little bit of like toe indent for the illusion. In terms of accessories for him, we do have the same scroll piece that Cornelius came with, and then he's got his cane, of course, which is pretty nice. Helps him balance out too. In terms of head sculpt, I think it's pretty solid. It's a pretty good looking head. I think it's a little heavy on the paint, maybe, but overall, I think it does capture Maurice Evans as Dr. Zaius pretty well. Here's we'll do another comparison shot to take a look at the likeness. I think this one is a little bit stronger than the Cornelius likeness overall. I think it does capture it, and I think the expression kind of fits Dr. Zaius quite well, especially for that first movie, which is what they're imitating here with the figure. But yeah, I think overall, pretty cool Dr. Zaius figure. He's not the only one. We actually, we got, I think out of all, the only character we got twice was Dr. Zaius. And so we'll look at a second one in Series 2. But we got one more figure to round out Series 1. And here we have the Gorilla Soldier. So this is a generic Gorilla Soldier. Pretty much, if you wanted to get multiple Gorilla Soldiers, fill out an army, they made at least an easy to get one in Wave 1. I think it was kind of smart. Two named characters in a Gorilla Soldier makes for a Wave 1, especially because there was a Wave 2 or a Series 2 coming up later. I love the details on this figure a whole lot because you got the vest and the gloves. You've got the bandolier as well. It's pretty nice. He's got the rifle you can hold, but then the baton actually can clip to the bandolier, but you can remove it for him to use, obviously. But it does have, kind of a nice realistic ring system. So you can just hook it on. It's kind of, okay, it's a lot trickier than I thought. I've done it before off camera. Anytime you put something on camera, something doesn't work. But you can see there, the pants, nice. I love the wrinkle detail. It adds a sense of realism to it. And yeah, the gorillas also had like normal shoes, not ape shoes. But you can see like they've got the fasteners on the boots as well, which I think is really nice. Now the interesting part here is we will see this figure multiple times in this line in multiple versions. This is just kind of like the first release of him. Now in terms of like accuracy to head sculpts, I don't really have anything to compare with this gorilla because it is kind of a generic gorilla. So I don't really have a side-by-side. I guess I'll just pull up whatever, I don't know, the Planet of the Apes wiki has for gorilla soldiers, and then just kind of throw that in, because it doesn't seem like it's based on a specific actor. It's just one of the looks of one of the gorillas. I'd have to pick them out of a crowd. A little tricky. But like I said, accessories-wise, he does have the rifle. He does have this hand to hold the rifle, and then he comes with an alternate right hand to hold the baton. So if you want him hitting people with the baton, you can use this hand. If you want to use the rifle, you're going to use that hand. I can't quite get the finger into the trigger hole, but it's also kind of a weird design just by the nature of what it is. But overall, pretty nice gorilla soldier. There's some issues with the figure's release strategy that we'll talk about later in the video, but I think as a figure on his own, really, really nice. So overall, I think Series 1 is a good start to the line. You know, in 2014, there was the high of the modern Planet of the Apes trilogy going on. It was time to do classic figures, and I think this was a good lineup. It's definitely leading you into we need more figures for sure, but we got a chimpanzee, we got an orangutan, and we got a gorilla. So you kind of got the nice, like, you know, 3 different colors, that way it's not too repetitive, but you got 2 named characters and the iconic gorilla soldier. So I think it was a pretty good, solid Series 1. But let's go on to Series 2 and see how this formula would continue. So kicking off Series 2, we have Zira. Now Zira, I would consider probably like the main ape character, at least the main ape protagonist of the first 3 movies. As much as Cornelius is, you know, iconic to the series, and as much as Roddy McDowall, of course, is a huge impact on the Ape series, being 3 different characters throughout different projects, I think that Kim Hunter Zira is really kind of more of the protagonist on the ape side. She's really the one that kind of pushes everybody to get things done, and is the one willing to break the rules a little bit more. And I really do love her character, and so this is a great, great figure of her. I'm going to move this out of the way so we don't lose anything. First things first, she is a completely new sculpt, of course. She's the only female character we got in this line, which is a bit of a bummer, though it is also kind of a consequence of the series itself not having too many female ape characters. At least, you know, Zira's the most prominent one. What I really like is that you've got, you know, the tunic is done in plastic, but then you have some soft goods material done for the underskirt, which allows her legs to move more freely than if it was a tunic. So she's not a traffic cone. She's actually got some posability there. She's got the ape shoes, of course, which match really well. I love the little detail of there's just a little hint of paint on the top of the toes to kind of give it a very much like almost an open toe look without it being, you know, the open toe look. So it matches the movie quite well. I really do like that. Of course, her arms, you know, same kind of detail we've seen before, kind of the sleeve look up to the hands. The head sculpt, I think, is much improved. In fact, let's do the side-by-side here. I think she has a much better likeness to her character than Cornelius did. And I think it's, you know, it's not even a close competition. I think definitely by Series 2, they had improved on the likenesses. She's got the fierceness to her. I think she's got the overall look. I think it's a really, really solid head sculpt on Zira, which is really awesome. I also will say the accessories are much improved as well. Cornelius just came with the scroll. With Zira, you get the paper airplane that Taylor threw at her in the first movie, which is really, really cool. And it actually is, you know, a folded piece of paper. She does get the little card that has Taylor's, you know, writing "My name is Taylor" on it. So that's, you know, very iconic to the movie. And then she comes with this portrait of her and Cornelius, which gives me Escape from the Planet of the Apes vibes more than anything. And what's cool is they could have just done, you know, a portrait of the actors in the movie, but they actually took the portrait with the action figures, and I really like that. That's a fun detail, because sometimes, yeah, what we get is like, oh, here's the action figure, and it comes with a picture that's just straight up picture from the movie. But in this case, they actually did that photo with the 2 action figures themselves, which I think is just super, super cool. I think it's just one of these little details that I really like. That's kind of like, okay, you know, you're on your shelf with your action figures are in the photo. Of course, I gotta put her with Cornelius here. You know, gotta get them together. Yeah, it's really amazing that just in one series removed, I think that Zira is a massive improvement, and it's really cool to see, you know, just how quick they improved him. I think Cornelius is still good, but I think Zira is definitely the winner out of the 2. Pretty much in all departments. I think Zira is just terrific. Alright, so Series 2 brought us a second Dr. Zaius. It would have been nice to have seen another orangutan, but I do understand why they did a second Zaius, because this is, you know, an equally iconic look for him. And he is, you know, one of the more famous characters. I mean, the Simpsons Planet of the Apes musical parody had a whole song about him.
Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius.
So, you know, it makes sense. The overcoat this time is actually a separate piece from the undershirt, which is really cool, but we do have the long coat look with the ape shoes and without the gloves because this is what he wore in kind of the rest of the movie. The interesting part here, too, is that we do have a different head sculpt as well on Zaius. He does have the same exact accessories as the previous figure. You get the scroll and you get the cane. He doesn't hold the cane nearly as well as the first version does, but he does have the same accessories. It would have been nice if one of them had come with the doll. That would have been a really cool bonus. But here is Series 1 Zaius. Here is Series 2 Zaius. So you can definitely see that the figures are completely different. They don't reuse anything besides the accessories, which is actually pretty cool. And the head sculpts. I think, in general, I kind of like the Series 1 Zaius head sculpt more. The Series 2 sort of feels a little bit simpler and just a little bit less accurate. It's very strange because I feel like, you know, definitely Zira was an improvement over Cornelius, but I think this head sculpt for Zaius I like more than this one. This one almost looks like a different ape. But yeah, it's nice to get Zaius again. You know, almost, again, because the head sculpts are different, you could almost just pretend, put this on the shelf and pretend it's just another one of the orangutans in the council. Honestly, probably could, because they do look enough different. Rounding out Series 2 is General Ursus. Now, General Ursus is the first Beneath the Planet of the Apes figure we got, and I think the only one that's specifically for Beneath. Ursus was introduced to be a good villain for Beneath. He is very much like, you know, leading the gorillas, and this is a really cool figure with a very iconic look to the character. So I'm gonna pull him off here. He does have the standard shoes, right? Not the ape shoes. That's how the gorillas work. They got their boots. These boots do feel like they're reused from the Gorilla Soldier, which, you know, I guess we could just do that comparison now. Are they? Yeah, they look like they could be, and that would make sense. It is kind of a uniform style. These definitely look like probably the same pants, and that's totally cool. But yeah, we've got really cool on his vest here. The vest design's really great. I love the paint washes to it. Got a really nice reflective look. The shoulder pads, the arm bracers, all of that looks really nice. And you can, again, you can see like where like the zippers and like the connections are in the back, which is awesome. He does have the iconic helmet that we see with all of the gorilla generals pretty much through the series and like the TV show and stuff. So you can see he's got the helmet. It doesn't come off. It is attached to his head, but he does have that. You got a really cool pointing hand here and an outstretched hand. Now, if you do want him to hold different accessories, he does come with an extra hand. So this pointing hand is good for pointing. It's not good for holding his little pistol, which the pistol he comes with looks like that. And he also comes with this rifle. And to give the rifle and the pistol some extra work, you know, you got the rifle, you got this extra hand. This hand, I think, works pretty good for the pistol because it actually lines up with the actual trigger. So if you want to have him hold the pistol, it works pretty good. For the rifle's supposed to be held, you know, thumb in there, finger in there, grip in there, and it just doesn't quite work. I think they tried to make one hand work for both weapons, but the grips are so different. I've never gotten it to work. Even in the promo images, they just kind of have him holding it like above his head like this, and you can just kind of like, you know, pretend like, oh, he's just raising the gun up. So that's pretty nice. But overall, I think, you know, for me, I'd rather have him less holding weapons and more just pointing and giving orders to the other gorillas, and I think that kind of fits his role quite nicely. Very cool figure. Now, in terms of head sculpt, let's do a little comparison. I think it's pretty solid to Ursus. I think in general the gorillas, you know, they don't have as much, I don't want to say they don't have as much detail as the chimps and the orangutans, but they do have less colors going on. So yeah, we can see Ursus compared to how he looked in Beneath, and yeah, they definitely nailed the helmet. I think the face sculpt overall is really solid. It's a great figure of an iconic villain, and yeah, really happy he made it into the line. So Series 2 follows the formula of Series 1, a chimpanzee, an orangutan, and a gorilla. In this case, we got 3 named characters, though one is a variant, so 2 new characters. I think it's pretty solid. I think all the figures are a massive improvement. Now, unfortunately for the toy line, this was the last normal wave of the line. Yeah, sales weren't exactly what NECA needed to continue the line as normal, and that's a real bummer because I think there's a lot of potential in a Planet of the Apes line, but a lot of people don't collect Planet of the Apes toys. They always seem to kind of die out quick. I think the iconicism and the real love of Planet of the Apes comes from the storytelling and the actors and the characters and watching the movies, more so than collecting merchandise for them. So unfortunately, almost every Planet of the Apes toy line ends pretty quick. Now, there was a third series plan, and it was far enough in development that NECA did not cancel it. However, they shifted plans, and so Series 3, instead of being a retail release at multiple stores the way Series 1 and 2 were, it was released in a special way, and that was San Diego Comic-Con 2015. Yes, that's right. Classic Series 3 was released as a 2015 convention exclusive for San Diego Comic-Con. The Comic-Con release came in a package like this, with the 3 boxes of the characters nicely laid out with tissue paper. Yes, the one I bought was completely brand new, never been opened, and yeah, I went all in for this one. But this set was pretty awesome, and it was a nice expansion on the line. And it's kind of unfortunate that this was the last actual series of figures. Now, if you did not go to San Diego Comic-Con 2015 and were wondering how did people get these, otherwise, the 3 figures were packaged together like this with a little banner wrapped around it and was released at Toys R Us instead. So there was 2 releases. There was the Comic-Con release and the Toys R Us release. Same exact figures, just, the Toys R Us one, they're banded wrapped this way. The Comic-Con one, they were packed into the box like I showed. But let's talk about the figures themselves. Alright, so the first figure of Series 3 / box set is Caesar from Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which is my personal favorite Planet of the Apes movie, especially of the original series. I love all the Apes movies, but Conquest for me, I really do like a lot of what that movie has to say, and I love the production design, and I love the music, and I love the filming locations, as you may have seen in my Conquest of the Planet of the Apes filming locations video that I already promoted once in this video, and promoting again because it does not have enough views. Go check that out. Also, there you go. There's the little bio, in case you missed that as well. But yes, this figure was featured in that video because I did take him to go see the Conquest filming locations. Fun fact, 2015 NECA figure, exclusive to Comic-Con. He got blown over by the wind at one point and landed flat on the concrete and somehow didn't shatter into a million pieces. So, thank you for that miracle. But yes, this guy has been to the filming locations of the movie, so very special. And actually, it was one of the reasons I ended up kind of going down this rabbit hole of making sure I had all the figures, was because I needed a Caesar to go do those Conquest filming locations the way I wanted to. But anyways, let's take a look at the figure himself, regardless of him visiting locations or not. So we have a completely new figure here. There's nothing reused from the previous chimpanzees. Of course, we have the green jumpsuit. Very simple in its design, very, very utilitarian, but nice paintwork, nice shading. We've got his feet as well, which are kind of like these little slippers. The ape feet, in Conquest. They didn't have as much budget, but it also made it easier for all the stuff they had to do in this movie. We've got the ape hands, of course, though, that are looking very nice. And like I said, not reused from previous figures. And of course, he's got the rifle. Before we talk about the head sculpt, I did make one modification on the figure because I was going to take him to the spots where they did like the ape revolt. I didn't want him to have the chain around his neck. So this piece here, the collar piece plus the chain and the holder, would be for like the ape auction scene when he's being auctioned off, which I did visit, but I didn't want this on there at all, and I wasn't going to deal with it while I was traveling. But basically, this is attached to the figure itself out of the box, and it's got the metal chain and the holder. There's no human characters to hold the chain, so it kind of just felt a little silly to have. So what I ended up doing was I ended up boiling water, putting his head into boiling water, letting it expand enough to get the joint popped off, so I could remove this piece and then pop the head back on. Don't super recommend that with rare figures from a Comic-Con exclusive, unless you're real confident in yourself or you really wanted to make a video look the way you wanted it to. And then personally speaking, I didn't want this on him all the time, so I just left it off. But other than that, I think, head sculpt wise, it's a massive improvement. The big bummer with Series 3 is that I think Series 3 is the best series of figures. Out of all 3 waves, the 3 figures in the set are absolutely the best, I think, from accessories to details to head sculpts. Like, they really nailed it on the wave that was canceled and shifted to being an exclusive. And that's a bummer. But I think this head sculpt is terrific. I think it captures, especially with the way the light keeps shadowing over one eye, I think it captures Caesar in that movie quite well. But yeah, very, very good. Now, adding to this, If you've noticed, I have him in a crouched position. Because of the nature of Conquest and where it is in the story, the apes are less evolved. Caesar himself is more evolved than the other apes in the movie. But he kind of shifts from being... So this interesting thing that Roddy McDowall does with his body is he shifts from being kind of more upright to being more hunched. And it's like when he's doing the battle scenes, he's really hunched over, whereas when he's doing his speech, he's standing up a little straighter. But the nice part of the figure is they give him enough hip range, so that way, and this is also another reason I keep him on the stand, that way he can have that like half crouch look going for him that I think is just super, super cool. Adding to this, there are other accessories. He has those two hands I think are good for holding the rifle. Also, this one has an extended finger, so it's good for pointing. He does come with two grip hands, and these grip hands are so he can hold the chain. Because in the auction scene, he kind of cheekily, like they drop the chains, and he cheekily picks them up and hands them to the guard. And so you do get those chains for him to hold as well. These manacles here, they don't close up, but they are sculpted to look like they could, which I think is really neat. But yeah, so if you wanted to have him hold the chains, you can totally do that. So I like that there's accessories for the ape auction scene, there's accessories for the ape revolt, and then everything in between. I think it's a stellar figure, and it's personally my favorite of the entire line. And that may be a little bit of bias because I love this movie and I love this character so much, but in general, I do think he's incredibly solid. And of course, I need to make everybody a little sad and pose him with his parents. The happy family that wasn't. Alright, so next up we have the Conquest Gorilla. He is listed as the third figure in the series, but it makes sense to go from one Conquest character to another. The Conquest Gorilla is a generic army trooper. Basically, it is the gorillas that Caesar went and did his conquest with. You can see we've got a nice little bio kind of explaining the character. And what's kind of fun, too, is that with the boxes, on Caesar he's got like the Ape Civilization logo from Ape City, whereas the Conquest Gorilla just has the riot shield. I think that's a great detail to show how these guys are different. The cool part, too, is that, I think these are the most battle-active apes in the Revolt, and so if you wanted to army build them, you totally could. In general, really nice figure. I think, once again, we have some really great sculpting. I want to get the shield out of the way, because it does kind of block a bit of the figure. You can see that the sculpt for the jumpsuit is very similar to Caesar's. It's probably reused. I won't say it for 100% certain, but I'm feeling pretty confident that the body's pretty much the same, and then the hands and the heads obviously are different, and then the color's different. But they feel about the same sculpt-wise, which makes sense. If you can reuse parts. That's how you get more toys. Once again, he can crouch pretty good. I find that, I do wish there was a bit of a torso crunch for the gorillas, because they were really hunched over. You can see we got a meat cleaver here in one hand. He also comes with a machete knife. You get a shotgun, and then, of course, you get the riot shield, which I really love the visual of an ape with a riot shield and a meat cleaver. It very much matches the vibe of Conquest, I think, quite well. You do get a pointing/gun trigger hand for him. This is really good for, like, the rifle itself. It's a really tight fit, so I've never actually squeezed the rifle in, but you can totally do that. And then this hand is pretty good for holding the machete knife. Or is that a machete knife? Is that a baker's knife that's gone crazy? I don't know. It's all stuff they picked up. I guess we'll do a head sculpt comparison just for fun. Once again, not going to find an exact match here because it is a generic gorilla. But I think overall, he just looks really great. A lot of fun accessories. If you could manage to get multiples, which is tricky. I've seen some people do it. There's been some crazy eBay listings. It's tricky to get multiples of a guy that's in a 3-pack. And that's also like the bummer, because this was a retail wave. Not only would they be easier to get, but you would be able to get a few gorillas, whereas now it's a little harder, because pretty much most of the listings you're going to find are going to be for the 3-pack in one of its forms, more so than just being able to buy a few gorillas on their own. But still a really awesome figure. And then rounding out the pack is General Aldo. So this could have easily been a third Conquest figure, but I'm glad they threw Aldo in. Battle for the Planet of the Apes, which was the last in the film series, it's not anybody's favorite. I know there's maybe some people that really love it. I think in general it is regarded as the worst of the original 5. But I think Aldo is an important enough character, and I think in general it was nice to at least get one figure from every movie. Because, we got, most of them are based on the first movie. We got 2 from Conquest. Cornelius and Zira count for Escape. So it was nice we got at least one figure from Battle. And it being Aldo, I think, makes a lot of sense. because he is kind of the lead villain of the movie. I think, if we're only going to get one figure from Battle, yeah, I would pick Aldo too. Maybe one of the other characters, just because we'll talk about this in a bit, but there's only Apes in the line. But I think Aldo is a good pick. I think it's a good pick. Overall, he does use some parts from Ursus, because as you'd imagine, the gorillas didn't change up their look, and also they reused a lot of props and costumes between movies. So you can see like the bracer arms, the pants, some of the other stuff like I think Aldo's really like a hodgepodge figure. You can see the upper arms are from the gorilla soldier. So yeah, he's reusing some parts here and there. That being said, he does have some new stuff. Bandolier reused, but the chest harness itself is new because he's got this new collar piece. In fact, I'm actually looking at it. He does have the same like jacket. They just added a new collar piece. So new collar, new head, new weapon, and then new other weapons. So his accessories are new, but the rest of it is reused. Even down to like the glove design and the hands from Ursus seem to be reused for Aldo. And these are all accurate reuses, so it's not a problem for the toy. It's just kind of a funny thing to notice. So of course he does have the gun, which is more of a human-style gun because of the timeline placement of Battle. He does have a knife here, which of course is iconic to the movie. He's got his blade, which goes into the holster on the bandolier, which is pretty cool. He does come with an extra hand to hold said blade, which is also great. And then in general, the head sculpt I think is pretty good. Let's roll up a photo of him. I think it's a pretty solid head sculpt. I think if they screwed up Aldo, people wouldn't care as much. I've seen single listings for this 3-pack. Aldo definitely is the easiest one to get. But I think it's nice that they did include him. I think, including something from each movie in the line, especially because this was what ultimately was the last wave of figures, it was pretty nice. Now, that being said, it may be the last wave of figures, but we still have some more things to talk about. So overall, as a series, Series 3, I think, is interesting. It does break the formula. We got Chimp, Gorilla, no orangutan, and then also, 2 figures from one movie, 1 figure from another. I do wonder if the plans slightly shifted, and this wasn't the original Series 3 lineup. Maybe there was an orangutan in here originally, and then they changed their minds when they knew that this was going to be shifted over to Comic-Con. I'm really glad they got these last 3 figures out because, it's not just me because I love Conquest, but I think it just adds some variety to the lineup. It allows us to kind of represent the other movies without, being able to go all the way. Now, there was one other release in the original run of this line, which was a Gorilla Soldier 2-pack that came with some extra accessories like backpacks and extra weapons, and there was an extra head sculpt for the Gorilla Soldiers in there. We're going to come back to that in a moment, because this was the end, right? We had the 3 series of figures, and then we had the 2-pack, and then that was it. There was no other classic Apes back in 2014, 2015. However, in 2024, with the release of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, NECA came back around and did some reissues of the line. So let's talk about those. So in fall of 2024, about 10 years since the original line, 4 figures were reissued to specialty retailers: Dr. Zaius, Zira, General Ursus, and the Gorilla Soldier. Now, when these went up for pre-order, it just said Planet of the Apes, Wave of 4. There was no Wave 1, there was no indication that there would be future reissues. And because of that, there wasn't any. These are the only 4 reissues we got. And that is a massive problem for collectors, and since they didn't do a second wave, I have a little bit of a bone to pick with this lineup. Alright, so first things first, how do you know if these are the reissues of the original if you're looking for them online? Well, the reissues do have a different box style. So you can see Zaius' box here compared to the original box style. They've added dedicated cardboard hooks as opposed to little plastic hooks. You can see that instead of a picture from the figure, you get a picture from the movie. The logo has shifted. The side banner, you can see there's a shot of Zaius here as opposed to a logo. And then again, a shot of the character and the name. And then on the back, you have the image of the Statue of Liberty, but without the looming face of Roddy McDowall. You still have the bios here, which is pretty nice to see. And then you can see that it says collect them all, and it lists the other figures, as opposed to saying like Series 1, Series 2, Series 3. So these boxes are different. You got, of course, your little bios here, which I do want to present. This is the reason I didn't show the boxes on the other figures, because I did start collecting this line when it came to the reissues, because I thought, well, you know, getting into Planet of the Apes, watching the other movies and stuff, really exciting year in 2024 for me and Apes. It was the first time I'd seen any of the sequels, and so, you know, I was kind of like, all right, let's get some new figures, and, you know, they did these reissues. I was like, perfect. And I kind of thought there was going to be a second series of them based on the choices they made. And I think there was one major misstep here that I do want to talk about, which is the character lineup. So first things first, I think, you know, reissuing Zira makes total sense. She was really hard to get, from what I understand. Her aftermarket price was nuts. Reissuing Zira makes sense. Putting out Dr. Zaius again also makes sense. Like we talked about, he was iconic enough to get 2 figures. I think it was good. I think it was giving him this look was smart too, because this is the more used look. General Ursus, great gorilla villain, really works it out. And then the gorilla soldier is the one I have the problem with. And there's a couple reasons. Also, I just noticed something that now bugs me. Zaius has a green stripe when he should have an orange to match his color. Zira has orange when she should have green. Ursus has purple, which is fine. And the gorilla soldier has red. Those colors should have been separate on the box. Nitpick, I know. But anyways, these figures are exactly the same as the ones released in 2014. No tweaks, no updates were done to them. Now, you may be wondering, why is there not any figure of Roddy McDowell in this wave? Whether, you know, Cornelius or Caesar, there should have been at least, you know, the most prominent actor of the original Apes series in this wave. And I can understand wanting to reissue the Gorilla Soldier, so that way people that wanted to army build them that, you know, didn't get the chance would buy into the line if they had all the previous ones. But here's the issue. We didn't get a Cornelius. His aftermarket price has jumped significantly because of it. And we did not need a single-packed Gorilla Soldier because not, I don't know, 2 months later, the Ultimate Gorilla Soldier was released. So the Ultimate Gorilla Soldier is the only quote-unquote new figure in 2024's Planet of the Apes line. And as it stands, is the last NECA Planet of the Apes release, period. There may be more in the future. This video was recorded in June of 2025. Not holding out hope for anything new at the moment. And this is not really, I don't think, deserving of the Ultimate name either. So first things first, NECA does different styles of figures. The Apes ones more basic. Ultimate are these fancier boxed figures. They come with a ton of accessories, and you get like a poster art. And this is a cool poster art because they've recreated the Go Ape campaign, which was after all 5 movies are out, they would do movie theater marathons where you could go see all 5 movies. And it was, I think it was like, you know, 20th Century Fox wants you to go ape, so they changed it to NECA wants you to go ape. I think that's clever. I think the box is really fun. It matches the style of the other, Ultimate figures. I think it's also cool that they advertise that Dr. Zaius, Zira, and Ursus are also available. But it does underscore my big problem with the reissue line, which is that if you were just going to turn around and give us a deluxe package Gorilla Soldier that has a lot more accessories, why'd you reissue the standard one instead of Cornelius? That is, I don't know what happened there, and I'm not going to sit and speculate. You know, there's a lot of toy logistics. Maybe they're trying to entice people to be like, oh, if Wave 1 sells, we'll reissue Cornelius. But they never said that. They never said anything about the line. The reissues, I think, you know, it was, because the price difference, ultimately, the price difference, I think the Ultimate Gorilla Soldier was like, I think $3 more than the regular and comes with like twice as many accessories. If people wanted to army build the Gorilla Soldier, they could do it with the Ultimate. There didn't need to be the basic reissue if it also meant that Cornelius wasn't going to get reissued. Because I think, you know, if I'm picking a reissue lineup, I'd get all 4 of the characters from the original movie into that reissue line. And even then, Ursus isn't from the original movie, but, you know, Cornelius should have been put in place of the Gorilla Soldier. Now, in terms of the Ultimate Gorilla Soldier, what does he all come with? So with the Ultimate, we get, you know, the basic Gorilla Soldier figure, you know, same figure, the same basic head sculpt. This one's just looks a little bit different than the standard because his mouth, I think, is glued a little bit awkwardly off. You get the General Ursus rifle that he included, of course, the baton. You get a backpack, which was originally only in the Gorilla 2-pack that I mentioned prior. And that's kind of like the basic accessories I have him loaded out with. You do get the same rifle that the basic Gorilla Soldier comes with, which is great. The alternate hand to hold the baton, or the hunting stick. This is, You know, it's kind of awkward because it doesn't really, like, you know, fold out exactly, but this is like the stick that they would carry around when they're hunting humans to wrap them up. And then you get 2 extra heads. And these 2 extra gorilla heads are the heads that came with the Gorilla Infantry 2-pack that I mentioned earlier. So basically, you're getting all the accessories from the 2-pack that were exclusive to it, plus what came with the basic one, plus General Ursus's rifle. And swapping the heads is a little bit easier on these than the newer figures, because it's kind of, or the older figures, I should say, because it's a newer figure, but the heads aren't quite sized right to go right on, so you're going to have to, like, do a little finagling. The backpack comes apart a little bit, but yeah, it doesn't come with, like, as much new stuff. I guess I could put that head on him. That one fit. That way he looks a little bit different than this guy, and I like that idea, 3 different heads. But yeah, they're really, you know, it's not like a full ultimate, because, like, when they do ultimates of older figures, sometimes it's just like, oh, we gave them extra accessories, but sometimes they upgrade, like, the joint systems and stuff. They didn't really do that here either. So it's still nice, but I think it, you know, it kind of fits more in the reissue camp than it does in, like, the new figure camp. I'll fix that backpack later, because he still has the old style hips. He doesn't have the ball joint hips, all that kind of stuff. We're getting into the weeds of NECA and things. But yeah, this feels like a reissue of the Gorilla 2-pack where it's just 1 figure. I have 2 gorillas now. I probably would have bought 2 Ultimate Gorillas just to have 2 gorillas instead. And, you know, I kind of think about buying a 3rd one. But, you know, it just doesn't seem like we needed to reissue the basic gorilla when there was going to be a gorilla right after with more accessories. So that's every NECA Classic Era Planet of the Apes figure. Now, this is everything that was released. However, there were some figures shown that never did see release. Let's talk about the canceled figures. So the following figures were shown, but were never given a designation of, like, Series 4, etc. But let's go through them. First of all, we have Vesca. Now, Vesca is a character from the Planet of the Apes TV series who has a really cool look with the eye patch and everything. Would have been really nice to see that figure. Kind of interesting that he kind of jumped the line over some other characters, but pretty cool to see something from the TV show. There was the Jailer from the original Planet of the Apes that had the cigar, which is also a really cool look. The Conquest Orangutan, which made total sense. It's just, you know, new head and hands to go with Caesar and the Conquest Gorilla. And then there was a head sculpt shown for Galen, which was Roddy McDowall's character in the Planet of the Apes TV series. Now, sadly, none of those ever came to be, and sadly, the reissues apparently didn't sell well enough to revive the line to get those figures made. So this is where we stand with the classic Planet of the Apes. This definitely fared better than the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes line, which we may talk about someday in the future. I think overall, there's a couple problems with the line that have sort of caused it to be unsuccessful both times around. I think, first of all, there is kind of like the, you know, I think people really love Planet of the Apes in the movie space, maybe not in the toy collecting space. This happens with a lot of movie franchises, not just Apes. NECA is kind of the ones to make figures based on movies that people don't usually make toys of, like they've done Back to the Future, for example. That's not usually a big toy line. I think Apes has a toyetic quality to it, but I do think that, you know, it does, you know, for the average viewer that may not know the characters as intimately, it does, you know, some of them start to blend together. Like, you know, the difference between Aldo and Ursus, for example. I think also, you know, in general, when it comes to the classic Apes series, the first movie is the most famous one. And so stuff based on the later movies may not grab as people's attention as much. Now, that being said, there definitely is an audience for it. One of the issues I think that caused with both the first time and the second time, no human characters. There are characters like George Taylor or Nova that definitely should have been a part of this line. There are other villains like the mutants from the later movies. You could have had Governor Breck to go with Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. There are other characters that they could have done that weren't apes that may have added some variety to the lineup, but also would have made a more complete display. As it stands, you know, incomplete display is part of the problem. I think the issue with the reissues is there was no Cornelius, and then looking at Cornelius's eBay prices may have dissuaded people from even bothering with the reissues because, again, you're missing an iconic character. I think that would have maybe helped, but who knows? In general, though, if you are a Planet of the Apes fan that is a toy collector and you love those classic movies, you really can't go wrong with these figures. They're pretty good. You know, when you're looking for them on an aftermarket, always be careful of, you know, possible breakage because they are NECA figures. They aren't the sturdiest things in the world. And also, you know, to keep an eye out for possible scammers as usual. For context of prices, when the figures were first released, they were priced at about $20 back in 2014. And when they did the reissues in 2024, they were priced at $35. Use that as a benchmarker. For me personally, trying to collect the line, I was able, of course, to get the 4 reissues, the Ultimate Gorilla. The first version, Dr. Zaius with the boots, I was able to grab him for about 20 bucks loose, which was really good. The set with Caesar, the Conquest Gorilla, and Aldo, that cost me a pretty penny, but I felt, all right, Comic-Con exclusive, not too bad, plus they were brand new in box. I had to pay a lot for Cornelius. I had to pay about 5 times his retail price, over 5 times his retail price, but for me it was worth it because it completed my collection, but it was a bummer. Like, you know, his price went up significantly, and he's getting harder to find. I really do like this line. I really do like NECA figures for a lot of lines, but some of the shortcomings and some of the short releases do kind of make it harder to collect. It's definitely one of those things where if you're a hardcore Apes fan, might be worth it, but, you know, it is going to cost you. It's not going to be easy. Even the reissues are now sold out in a lot of places, so I wish you the best of luck in your collecting. So that does it for this video. That was the complete history of the classic era Planet of the Apes figures from NECA. There were some other items they made from the classic movies, but because they weren't this scale and this line, didn't cover them in this video. Maybe we'll take a look at them in the future. You never know. And to make sure you see more Planet of the Apes videos on the channel, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the notification bell if you haven't already. Also, go check out that Conquest of the Planet of the Apes filming location video, please. I really, really loved how that turned out and would love more people to see that. Leave any comments or questions in the comment section down below. Tell me, are you an Apes fan that's collected these figures? Have you run into frustrations of some of them being really hard to get? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to continue the conversation, we have a Discord server linked below. If you want to help support the channel directly, there are channel memberships available with perks like early access to videos and member-exclusive live streams. Let's give some special shout-outs to our channel members. Special shout-out to all of our channel members, including Captain Tier, Spin-54, Masterbin95, Forever1000, Super Shags Boom, Professional Troll Taylor, Jeffrey Piamonte, Lacey Dean, Ben Nguyen, Mr. Airverse16, Jamie's World, Senaroth, The Clueless Collector, Z-Man 12 Bat, Isabella Lawrence, Geets, TRPCRD, Omega Sane, Kakiku Kaku, Mario Anthony Gangwon, Ben Odinson, and Mr. Smelly Potato. Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful support of this channel. If you so wish, I'm on social media at Blue Sky at Soundout12, my wonderful graphic designers on social media and Discord at DarkClaw643, and Hero Club is at hero-club.com for news, interviews, and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, go Ape!